Welcome to my channel. I hope today's story will be something you truly enjoy. Please support me even more. Now, let's begin the story.
My name is Jolene. 3 Fridays ago in my kitchen in Spokane, my 10-year-old son was showing his cousin how to make a balloon explode with vinegar and baking soda. The front door suddenly flew open. My younger brother stormed in, yanked the leather shoe off his foot, and repeatedly struck my son across his back and shoulders. "You little useless kid, all you do is steal ideas," he shouted with each vicious swing. His wife stood right there smirking. "A fatherless kid can only get so far," she sneered. The sharp slap of leather on skin echoed throughout the room. My son screamed. Red welts appeared instantly. I froze for 3 heartbeats, phone already in my hand, and silently did the one thing they never thought a family member would dare to do. If you've ever been forced to choose between blood and your own child, stay until the end. What happened next left my brother speechless and changed everything forever. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell now because you won't believe how far this went. My name is Jolene. 10 years ago, almost to the day, I gave birth to my son Cash in January at Deaconess Hospital in Spokane. 4 weeks later, in the exact same hospital, my younger brother Drake and his wife Faith welcomed their daughter Sage. The nurses on the maternity floor joked that our family had booked the whole month. Cash came first, Sage followed, and from the beginning everyone said the two would grow up more like twins than cousins. Drake had married Faith just 1 month before I walked down the aisle. We'd planned it that way on purpose. Back-to-back weddings, one big party split over 2 weekends. We laughed about how our kids would be the same age, same classes, best friends forever. Mom cried happy tears every time we talked about it. Then everything changed. When the kids were 3, my husband was killed on Highway 395 by a drunk driver who crossed the median. I remember the exact date because it was 2 weeks before their shared 4th birthday party we never had. Cash kept asking why Daddy wasn't coming to blow out candles with him. I didn't have an answer. Drake was my rock those first months. He slept on my couch more nights than at his own house. He took Cash to preschool when I couldn't get out of bed. He held me while I cried in the grocery store parking lot because I couldn't remember how to buy food for only 2 people. Faith came to the funeral. She brought a casserole and a card. She told me I was strong. I believed her. The shift started so slowly I almost missed it. Preschool reports came home. Cash was already reading simple books. Sage was still working on letters. Faith laughed it off at first, saying, "Well, boys sometimes get a head start. Girls catch up later." Then kindergarten happened. Cash tested into the gifted program. Sage didn't. Faith stopped laughing. Instead, she started making comments every time the kids were together. If Cash finished his dinner fast, she'd say to Sage, "Look how some kids just swallow without tasting." "We take our time, right?" If he built a complicated Lego set, she'd tell Sage, "That's fine if you like following instructions. I prefer creative minds who make up their own designs." Drake never corrected her. He'd just give me that tight smile and mouth she's stressed across the table. By 1st grade, the comments weren't even disguised anymore. Every achievement Cash had became proof in Faith's words that some children are handed everything while others have to earn it. Every time he brought home an A, she made sure Sage's B was mentioned twice as loud. Every science fair ribbon he earned came with a lecture at the next family dinner about how certain schools obviously play favorites. I started hiding report cards. I stopped signing the parent brag sheet at conferences. I told teachers not to send home the Student of the Month certificates if Faith might see them. Mom watched it all and tried to smooth things over, but even she couldn't fix the look in Faith's eyes every time Cash walked into a room. It wasn't disappointment in her own daughter. It was resentment toward my son. I kept thinking if I just downplayed Cash's successes enough, if I made him seem average in front of them, the tension would disappear. It didn't. It only gave Faith more room to twist ordinary moments into competitions nobody else was playing. By the time the kids were 8, I was making excuses to skip family events altogether. Birthdays became separate parties. Holidays got split. I told myself I was keeping the peace. Looking back, I see I was already teaching Cash that being exceptional around certain people would cost him something. I just never imagined the price would one day be the swing of his own uncle's shoe. 2 years ago, everything turned ugly. Cash and Sage, both 8, walked into 4th grade at Jefferson Elementary together. Same classroom, same teacher, same everything. For the first time, the difference between them wasn't just noticeable, it was impossible to ignore. Cash came home the 3rd week of school with a blue ribbon from the district science fair. He'd built a working volcano that actually changed color when it erupted. The local paper ran a picture. His teacher emailed me that night saying colleges were already asking about him. He was 8. Sage brought home a participation certificate and a C+ on her first big project. That same weekend at Mom's house, Faith held up Sage's certificate like it was a joke and said, "At least my daughter doesn't need flashy chemicals to feel smart." Then she looked straight at Cash and added, "Some kids think a volcano makes them better than everyone else." Cash just stared at his shoes. I felt my face burn. From that day on, every single achievement Cash earned became ammunition. He qualified for the statewide science Olympiad. Faith told anyone who would listen that the judges clearly favored certain types of families. He scored in the 99th percentile on the standardized test. Faith posted on Facebook about how over-testing ruins childhood the same day. He got picked for the accelerated math track. Faith started asking Sage in front of him why she couldn't try a little harder like her cousin who has nothing else going on. Drake stopped making excuses for her. Instead, he started nodding along. If I tried to defend Cash, Drake would cut me off with Faith's "just being honest. Not every kid can be the star." If Mom tried to change the subject, Faith would laugh and say, "It's okay, Rose. We're all adults here. Some of us just have to work harder for the same attention." Cash started hiding his awards in his backpack. He asked me not to tell anyone when he won. He was 9 years old. I pulled him out of the spring science fair even though he'd already built the project. I told the school he was sick. He didn't argue. He just looked relieved. Meanwhile, the gap kept growing. Cash was reading high school level books for fun. Sage was still struggling with chapter books. Cash finished math worksheets in minutes. Sage needed extra help after school. None of that was anyone's fault, but Faith acted like it was personal. She started timing how long Cash spent on homework versus Sage. She kept score of teacher compliments. She even asked the principal once in front of other parents if the gifted program had diversity requirements, because it sure didn't look like it. Drake backed her every time. By the end of 4th grade, Cash had won the Washington Young Inventors Award. The ceremony was downtown. I took him alone. Drake and Faith didn't show. Later that night, Drake texted me a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. Faith posted a photo of Sage at dance recital with the caption, "Proud of the effort, not just the trophy." Cash saw it. He was 10. He stopped talking about school completely. That summer, I enrolled him in a private STEM camp 3 hours away just so he could be around kids like him without feeling guilty. When he came home excited about a robotics mentor who said he had college-level talent, I made him promise not to mention it at the next family barbecue. Because by then the barbecues had rules. No school talk, no awards, no future plans. Just small talk and forced smiles, while Faith watched Cash like he'd stolen something from her daughter that could never be returned. I hated what it was doing to my son. I hated what it was doing to me. But I still loved my brother. I still wanted Sage to have her aunt. I kept hoping if I just waited it out, Faith would get tired and move on to something else. Instead, it only got worse. Sunday dinners at Mom's house became toxic. For as long as I could remember, Rose's dining room table on Sunday evenings was sacred. Same time every week, same menu rotating between pot roast and lasagna, same mismatched chairs pulled in from the garage when we outgrew the original 8. After my husband died, those dinners were the only place I still felt like I belonged to something bigger than just me and Cash. Then Faith turned them into battlegrounds. It always started the same way. We'd barely finish saying grace before Faith would lean toward Sage and ask loud enough for the entire table, "So tell Grandma what place you got in the spelling contest this week." Sage would mumble third or fifth, and Faith would beam like it was Olympic gold while shooting me a sideways glance to make sure I heard. If Cash stayed quiet, Faith filled the silence herself. "Some kids just get all the easy words, huh?" she'd say with a little laugh. That wasn't a laugh at all. Mom would try to steer the conversation to safer ground, weather, church, anything but Faith always circled back. One Sunday last fall, Cash accidentally let slip that he'd been chosen to represent the school at the Regional STEM Expo. Before I could change the subject, Faith put her fork down and said, "Must be nice to have a mom with so much free time to help with projects." The table went dead silent. Drake cleared his throat and added, "Yeah, some of us have to work full time and still make dinner." Mom's face turned red, but she didn't say a word. I started counting the minutes until we could leave. Another time, right after Christmas, Sage opened a gift from Mom, a craft kit. Cash had received a robotics starter set. Faith held up the craft kit and announced, "Look, Sage got something she can actually finish in one afternoon." Not everyone needs a $1,000 gadget to feel important. Cash was 10. He looked at me with eyes that said he wished he could disappear. I made an excuse about homework and took him home early. Drake texted me later, "Faith didn't mean it like that." I didn't reply. The worst was Easter dinner last year. Mom had made Cash's favorite lemon meringue pie. Faith took one bite, pushed the plate away, and told Sage, "Honey, we don't eat dessert when other people are still struggling with their weight." Cash had maybe had 10 pounds of baby fat left. I stood up, took both kids' hands, and walked out without a word. That was the first Sunday I skipped entirely. After that, I cut visits down to once or twice a month, only the big occasions, birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Even then I arrived late and left early. Mom begged me to keep coming, said family was family. I told her family wasn't supposed to make an 11-year-old hate the sound of his own name. Faith noticed the absences. She started texting me the night before every dinner. "We'll miss you guys tomorrow," with a sad face emoji. I never answered. Drake stopped texting altogether. The final straw came last summer, Mom's birthday. I showed up because I couldn't break her heart on her 70th. 10 minutes in, Faith raised her glass and said to Rose, "Thank you for raising such different grandchildren. One who works hard and one who just gets lucky." Drake actually clinked his glass against hers. Cash spent the rest of the evening hiding in Mom's backyard. I found him sitting on the old swing set in the dark. He looked up and whispered, "Mom, can we please not come back here for a while?" He was 11. That night, I decided the monthly visits were over. I told Mom I loved her, but I wouldn't bring Cash where he wasn't safe to be himself. She cried. I cried harder. But I meant it. From then on, we saw Mom alone, midweek coffee dates, quick lunches, anything that didn't include Faith and Drake. It hurt, but it was survivable. Until 3 Fridays ago when they suddenly needed me again. 3 Fridays ago, they had an urgent appointment. Drake rang my doorbell at 11:58 a.m., instead of calling first, which already told me something was wrong. He stood on the porch holding Sage's backpack in one hand and her hand in the other. Faith waited in the running SUV, sunglasses on, staring straight ahead. "Hey, Joe," he started, voice rough. "The Family Wellness Counseling Center downtown had a cancellation. Only slot before Christmas. We took it. 1 o'clock. We literally have no one else for Sage this afternoon. Please." I hadn't had either of them inside my house in almost 8 months. The last time was Mom's birthday, the night I swore would be the last. But Sage was looking up at me with those huge brown eyes and a rolled-up science fair poster under her arm, and the word no died in my throat. Of course I said, "Come in." Faith never got out of the car. Drake handed over the backpack, muttered, "We'll be back by 5:30 latest," and jogged away before I could ask a single question. Sage stepped inside, kicked off her shoes, and immediately brightened when Cash appeared at the top of the stairs. Hi, Aunt Jolene. Cash. Guess what my project is due Monday, and it's on air pressure, and I brought everything. She was practically bouncing. Cash's whole face changed. He came down 2 steps at a time. Let's see it. They took over the kitchen table in seconds. Poster board markers, empty soda bottles, baking soda vinegar, food coloring balloons, everything spilled out like a rainbow explosion. The title already written in purple glitter read, "Invisible Forces: How Air Pressure Really Works." Cash scanned the instruction sheet once, then looked at Sage. "We can make this 10 times better," he said quietly. "Want to?" She nodded so hard her ponytail whipped side to side. I stayed in the background pretending to wipe counters that were already clean. For the next 3.5 hours, I watched something I never thought I'd see again. Cash became the patient big brother Sage never had. He explained molecules like they were tiny party balloons bumping into each other. He let her pour every measurement herself. When the first attempt only half filled the bottle balloon, he didn't fix it. He asked, "What do you think happened?" Sage guessed wrong twice, then got it right on the 3rd try and screamed with joy when the balloon finally inflated on its own. They must have done the reaction 15 times, changing colors, racing the clock, adding dish soap to make foam volcanoes. Sage laughed so hard she got hiccups. Cash laughed with her, the real laugh I hadn't heard since he was 7. Between attempts, he drew quick sketches on scrap paper arrows showing pressure differences, simple formulas for gas laws. Sage copied everything in her own careful handwriting. When she asked a question he didn't know off the top of his head, he grabbed my laptop, looked it up, and explained it like he'd known it forever. By 4 o'clock, the poster was transformed. Hand-drawn diagrams, step-by-step photos they'd taken with Sage's tablet, a QR code linking to a 30-second video of the balloon inflating itself. Sage stepped back, hands on hips, and declared, "This is the coolest project in the entire 5th grade. Nobody else is doing anything like this." Cash shrugged, cheeks pink. "It's your project. You did all the work." Sage spun around to me. "Aunt Jolene, can Cash come present with me on Monday?" "Please, Mrs. Carter said partners are allowed if we want." I started to answer, but Cash spoke first. "I'd really like that," he said, voice soft but sure. Sage threw her arms around his waist and squeezed until he laughed and hugged her back. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup. They sat at the counter, swinging their legs, still talking non-stop about dry ice next time, about entering the regional fair as a team, about maybe building a real hovercraft for 6th grade. For the first time in years, my kitchen felt warm, loud, alive in the way it used to be when they were toddlers. At 4:57, Sage's phone buzzed. Text from Faith, leaving now. 10 minutes. Sage's shoulders dropped just a fraction, but she started packing immediately. Cash helped roll the poster gently, tied the yarn, carried it to the porch like it was fragile glass. When Drake's SUV turned onto our street, Sage ran out, waving the poster over her head like a victory flag. I stayed in the doorway. Faith climbed out first. She took one look at the poster, at Sage's glowing face, at Cash standing proudly beside her cousin, and something dark flashed across her features. Drake got out slower, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Sage launched into the story before they reached the steps. "Mom, Dad, look what we did." Cash showed me how the molecules push harder and we made the balloon blow itself up without touching it. And we added foam, and it's so much better than the instructions. And Faith cut her off mid-sentence. "We'll see it in the car, honey. Get your backpack." Sage's smile faded, but she obeyed. Cash gave her one last wave. Drake managed a tired nod in my direction and turned back to the car. As they pulled away, I watched Faith twist in the passenger seat to examine the poster more closely. Even from 20 feet away, I could read her lips forming the words, "He did all of this with you." Sage nodded eagerly. Faith's face went stone cold. I shut the door, heart already pounding with a dread I couldn't name yet, and turned to find Cash still brushing glitter off his shirt, smiling the biggest smile I'd seen in years. "That was the best afternoon ever," he said. I pulled him into a hug so tight he squeaked, holding on until the feeling that something terrible was coming finally eased its grip. Because for a few short hours everything had felt right again. The front door flew open without a single warning. I was sliding the last empty vinegar bottle into the recycling bin when the deadbolt snapped back hard enough to rattle the doorframe. No knock, no text, no notice. Drake charged in first, face flushed crimson, breathing like he'd sprinted all the way from downtown. Faith stepped in right behind him, sunglasses still on, even though the sun had set, arms crossed so tight her knuckles were white. Sage was balanced on a kitchen stool, holding the 2-liter bottle high like a championship trophy. Cash had just tipped in the final measured spoon of baking soda. The balloon on top inflated quickly and loudly, then burst with a sharp pop, sending rainbow confetti across the table for their grand finale. Sage squealed with pure 11-year-old joy. "It worked again, Mom, Dad." "Look." That squeal was the spark. Drake's eyes locked on Cash and something inside him exploded, his jaw clenched so tightly I could hear it click. In a violent jerk, he yanked the polished brown leather dress shoe off his right foot and raised it above his head. "You think you can just steal her project and play the genius?" He roared, his voice cracking with rage. "You're just a little loser, only good at stealing ideas." The shoe came down once, a single heavy blow across Cash's upper arm and shoulder. The impact made a dull, sickening thud. Cash stumbled sideways, eyes wide in shock, a sharp cry escaping before he could stop it. A red welt appeared instantly through the thin fabric of his NASA t-shirt. Faith didn't move to stop him. She folded her arms tighter and sneered, "A fatherless kid trying to play teacher. Some people really don't know their limits." Sage's joy shattered. She leapt off the stool and threw herself between her father and her cousin. "Daddy, stop. He was helping me. It's my project." Cash made it better. Drake froze, shoe still raised, chest heaving like a raging bull. Cash clutched his arm, tears already forming, staring at the uncle who had once carried him on his shoulders like he was a stranger. I dropped the recycling bin. It clattered across the tile. 3 strides later, I was there. My hands clamped around Drake's wrist before he could swing again. My grip was iron. "Put it down." My voice was low, shaking deadly. He tried to wrench free. I twisted harder. Faith reached for my shoulder, nails ready. "Jolene, you're completely overreacting." I spun and faced her so fast she stepped back into the fridge. Magnets rained down. "Touch me and see what happens." Cash whispered, "Mom." His voice cracked at the single word. Sage was sobbing now, clinging to Cash's waist with both arms. "Please, Daddy, don't be mad at him. Cash helped me so much." Drake's eyes flicked to his daughter's terrified face, then to the angry red mark on Cash's arm, then to the shoe trembling in his raised hand. The rage drained out of him like someone had pulled a plug. His arm dropped. The shoe slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a hollow thud. I didn't wait to see if he would pick it up again. I released his wrist, snatched my phone from the counter, and dialed 911 while they all still froze in that horrible tableau. 911, what is your emergency? My brother just struck my 11-year-old son with a shoe in my kitchen, I said loud and clear so everyone could hear. I need officers here immediately. 2418 East Pinecrest Drive, Spokane. Faith gasped like I'd slapped her. Hang up right now, it was only one hit. Drake found his voice pleading. Joe, come on. I lost my temper. Just 1 second. We're family. I looked him straight in the eye. Family does not leave marks on a child. Ever. Sage was crying harder, still wrapped around Cash. Cash stood rigid, tears silently rolling down his cheeks, staring at the floor. Sirens were already rising in the distance. Faith tried again, her voice climbing. You're destroying everything over nothing. You'll regret this. No, I said, ice cold. I'm protecting my son. That's everything. 2 patrol cars screeched into the driveway exactly 7 minutes and 51 seconds later. The first deputy through the door was a tall woman with her hair in a tight bun. The second was a broad-shouldered man already reaching for his cuffs. They took one look at the shoe lying sideways on the tile, the fresh red welt on Cash's arm. Sage sobbing me standing guard with the phone still in my hand, and Drake standing barefoot and shaking, and they understood immediately. Sir stepped back slowly, hands where I can see them. Drake raised his hands like he was moving in slow motion. The male deputy guided him toward the door. He didn't resist. Faith's protests went shrill. This is insane. He's the uncle. It was barely anything. The female deputy knelt beside Cash. Hey, buddy, can you tell me your name? Cash? He whispered, voice small. Sage hiccuped through her tears. My daddy hit him, and he didn't do anything wrong. I stayed on the line with dispatch until the deputy nodded that I could hang up. My knees gave way. I sank to the floor, pulled Cash into my arms. He buried his face in my shoulder and finally let the sobs out. Drake didn't say another word as they walked him out. He just stared at the shoe on the kitchen floor like he couldn't believe it belonged to him. Faith stood in the doorway yelling that I was tearing the family apart, that blood was thicker than water, that I would live to regret this. I looked at her still holding my crying son and answered once very quietly so only she could hear, not when that blood is my child's. The door closed behind the deputies. The house fell eerily silent except for Sage's soft crying and Cash's ragged breathing against my neck. Outside, red and blue lights painted the cul-de-sac. Neighbors stood on their lawns, phones in hand. Inside the balloon lay flat and empty confetti scattered across the table like a celebration that never got to finish. And that was the exact moment our family broke for good. Deputies were in my kitchen in under 8 minutes. The female deputy, badge name Rivera, stepped in first. Her partner, Deputy Chen, followed with his hand resting lightly on his holster. They scanned the scene in 1 second, the single leather shoe on the tile, the red welt on Cash's arm. Sage crying against my leg, me, holding my shaking son Drake standing barefoot, and pale Faith still shouting from the doorway. Rivera's voice cut through everything. Everyone stay calm. Sir, step away from the children. Drake raised both hands and took 2 steps back. Chen moved behind him, cuffs already out. The metallic click when they closed around Drake's wrists sounded louder than the balloon pop had. Faith lunged forward. You can't do this. He's the uncle. Rivera blocked her with one arm. Ma'am, back up now. That's when Mom burst through the side door that connects our houses. She must have seen the lights from her kitchen window and run the whole way in slippers. Her gray hair was wild robe, half-open eyes, huge. What in God's name is going on? She cried. Then she saw Cash's arm and Drake in cuffs. Her hand flew to her mouth. Drake, what did you do? Drake finally spoke, voice hoarse. Mom. Mom didn't let him finish. She walked straight to Cash, knelt, and gently turned his arm to see the mark. Her face went white. You hit my grandson with a shoe. Chen was already reading Drake his rights. Mom didn't even look at him again. She stood up, walked over, and slapped her own son across the face hard enough that his head snapped sideways. The deputies didn't stop her. Rivera turned to me. Ma'am, we need to get the child medically cleared. Standard procedure when there's visible injury. I nodded, numb. Sacred Heart is 10 minutes away. Mom spoke before I could. I'll drive. Sage comes with me. Faith tried one last time. Rose, tell them it was nothing. Tell them to let him go. Mom looked at her like she was seeing her for the first time. My grandson has a welt the size of a belt buckle on his arm. That is not nothing. The deputies walked Drake out. Mom didn't watch. She took Sage's hand, then mine, and led us to her car. Cash climbed into the back seat without a word. Sage sat beside him, still crying quietly. At Sacred Heart ER, the triage nurse took one look and moved us to the front of the line. A pediatric doctor named Dr. Patel examined Cash under bright lights. She photographed the welt from every angle measured. It documented bruising already turning purple. She asked Cash gentle questions. He answered in whispers, never letting go of my hand. Any loss of consciousness? No dizziness. No. Can you move your fingers? He wiggled them, tears falling. Dr. Patel turned to me. Soft tissue injury only. No fracture, no concussion. Ice ibuprofen rest. But the police will want these photos. Mom stood in the corner the whole time, arms wrapped around Sage, rocking her like she was 3 again. When we were done, Child Protective Services arrived, standard protocol. The caseworker, Ms. Alvarez, interviewed me privately first, then Cash with a teddy bear in his lap. Sage gave her statement in the hallway with Mom. Every answer was the same. Uncle Drake hit Cash because he was mad about the science project. By 10:47 p.m., we were back home. Mom made cocoa, nobody drank. Sage fell asleep on my couch, clutching the project poster like a shield. Cash sat beside me, head on my shoulder, staring at nothing. At 11:12, my phone rang, jail number. I let it go to voicemail. At 11:34, Mom's phone rang. Same number. She answered, listened for 5 seconds, then said, "You lost the right to call yourself his father tonight," and hung up. Faith texted 17 times. I blocked the number. Just after midnight, Rivera called to confirm Drake Allen Thompson was booked into Spokane County Jail on 1 count of injury to a child, a Class C felony in Washington state. Bond hearing tomorrow morning. No release tonight. Mom stayed until dawn. She tucked Sage into the guest room, then sat with me on the porch steps, both of us wrapped in the same old quilt. She spoke only once. I raised him better than this. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. When the sun came up, Mom kissed Cash's forehead while he was still sleeping, whispered, "I love you" to me, and walked back to her house. She left the connecting door unlocked the way it had been our whole lives. But everything felt different now. The welt on Cash's arm turned ugly shades of purple and yellow over the next days. He wore long sleeves to school even though it was warm. He didn't flinch when teachers asked. He just said he fell off his bike. Sage stayed with us for 4 nights in a row. Faith finally came to get her eyes red, voice small, promising it would never happen again. Sage hugged Cash goodbye and whispered, "I'm sorry my dad hurt you." Cash hugged her back and said, "It's not your fault." Drake stayed in jail until the hearing. His public defender asked for release on recognizance. The prosecutor showed the ER photos. The judge set bond at $25,000 and ordered no contact with Cash or me. Mom paid nothing. She told the bail bondsman, "Let him sit." And that was the night our family split cleanly in 2. 6 months later, the consequences are permanent. Drake stood in the Spokane County courtroom last month, wearing an orange jumpsuit 2 sizes too big. The prosecutor played the ER photos on the big screen, one clear, ugly welt across my son's arm. The judge didn't blink. 10 months incarceration at Airway Heights Correctional Center, followed by 3 years, supervised probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a permanent no-contact order with Cash and me. Drake didn't look at me once. He only stared at the floor while the gavel fell. Boeing fired him the same week. 21 years of service gone with 1 HR email. Faith filed for divorce 3 days before sentencing. She moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town and told anyone who asked that she needed to protect Sage from the drama. Sage didn't go with her. The day Faith came to pick up the rest of her clothes, Mom met her at the door with a single suitcase already packed. "You lost the right to call yourself this child's mother the night you stood by and watched," Mom said. Faith cried, begged, promised therapy, promised change. Mom closed the door. Sage stayed. Mom turned the spare bedroom into Sage's room the next weekend. Pink walls, new comforter photos of her and Cash on the dresser. Sage calls her grandma every night now and has never once asked to visit her dad in prison. Some wounds are deeper than blood. Cash started at Northwest Christian Academy in September on a full academic scholarship they created the week the story hit the local news. The headmaster called me personally. "We've followed his science fair record for years," he said. "We want him here." Cash wears the navy blazer without complaint. He comes home with new trophies, new friends, new confidence. The long sleeves are gone. The scar has faded to a faint pink line he no longer hides. We sold the old kitchen table, the one with the confetti scratches that never quite came out, and bought a round one instead. No corners. Mom, Sage, Cash, and I eat dinner together 4 nights a week. The other 3, Sage sleeps over here. The connecting door between our houses stays unlocked again, but now it feels like a bridge instead of a chain. Drake writes letters from prison. Neat handwriting, full apologies, promises to make it right when he gets out. Mom returns every envelope unopened, addressee unknown written in red marker across the front. She told me once, voice steady, "I have one son left to protect, and it isn't him." Faith tried to fight for custody. The judge looked at the police report, the ER file, the fact that she never once tried to stop what happened, and gave Mom temporary sole placement. Faith gets supervised visits twice a month at a county facility. Sage goes because Grandma says family manners still matter, but she counts the minutes until she can come home. Cash won the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair in April. They announced his name over the loudspeaker and the entire auditorium stood up. I cried in the back row. Sage screamed louder than anyone, jumping up and down in the aisle until security told her to sit. When Cash walked across the stage, medal around his neck, he looked straight at us and smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in half a year. We don't talk about Drake anymore. His name is never spoken in either house. The few relatives who still ask get the same answer: that part of our lives is over. Sometimes late at night, I sit on the porch with Mom and we drink tea in silence. Fireflies blink across the shared backyard where the kids now play catch until the stars come out. Sage calls Cash brother now. He pretends to hate it and secretly loves it. Last week, Cash asked if he could change his last name to mine alone when he turns 18. I told him we'd talk about it when the time comes. He nodded, satisfied. There is no reconciliation waiting on the horizon. No tearful family reunion when Drake walks out of prison in 8 months. No Christmas card that magically fixes 10 years of poison. Some breaks can't be mended. They can only be survived. And we are surviving beautifully. Cash has colleges sending recruitment letters already. Sage wants to be an astronaut. Mom planted new roses along the fence line between our houses, bright red ones that bloom no matter how cold the winter gets. We kept the good parts of family and buried the rest. That is the only happy ending we need.